Do you agree that, it's time that we all wake up and take responsibility, even for our ancestors that did not know any better?
Been waiting patiently to have this kind of conversation. Well, it's another Wake Up with Casey. I'm Kimberly, and I love the arts. Between theater, music, acting, sculptures, paintings, even fashion, shoes. To me, it's some form of art. But growing up, I fell in love. Like, I know there's TV shows and whatnot. Growing up in the 80s, it was so different. And I fell in love with a show and fell in love with somebody that was on this show because him and a few others it was like a group of them that were special and unique, and I admired and respected and helped me therapeutically with entertainment. And I have Bruce Vilanch joining us today. Thank you, Bruce, for coming.
Sure, thank you. My piercing blue steel gaze.
Blue steel. But honestly,
Practice
like growing up in the 80s, there was a few, of course there was Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and there was Hollywood Squares.
Right.
And
there was Hollywood Squares, and there I was on it.
Yes, you were, but it was like comical because there was a group of other comedians, actors, and whatnot that joined in, and it was a positive entertainment. And compared to what's going on today, I don't see much of that kind of energy in today. Would that be?
That's an interesting point. I don't know where you would look for it. It's all around now. Even then we were kind of in the world of snark. So that typified by Letterman, and who was not so much snarky as an oddball, but there was a lot of the humor had shifted, to being very observational, but also kind of mean-spirited. And I think now it's probably coming around the other way because everybody who was being shamed has spoken out about how you can't do that anymore. So I think that that may have something to do with it. But there's a resurgence of all that kind of crazy television now. With all those game shows that were on have all come back. Squares may even come back. They're doing it now on VH1 as hip hop squares with all rappers because we know how funny rappers are. But they're doing all the old material, which is truly bizarre in my estimation. Really crazy bizarre. But that was the part of the when Hollywood Squares has always worked. When we brought it back in the 90s, our goal was to make it more fun than a game. And as it suddenly there was a game show explosion, and we had to make it more of a game. We had to make the stakes higher, and that was probably what killed it off early, in my estimation, because people like to see these 9 celebrities having a good time, being like they're at a party, and that was how we shot it. We shot a week in a day. We shot 5 of them in a day, and as the day progressed, the show got looser and looser because after the 3rd show we would have wine. And so the Thursday and Friday shows were very loose indeed. Sorry about the lighting. Something's happening here in this room. Anyway, so there was that. We were transmitting that kind of energy.
Well, but what I find fascinating is that the way it was created when you guys were doing it, it was working. Why did you have to change it?
Because game shows, because Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was the #1 show on television, and it was huge, and so it was deemed by the people who were syndicating the show, that we had to add more of the stakes had to be higher. The prizes had to be bigger, and it had to be winning the thing was more important because you were getting something. There was a bonus round where you got a Mercedes or a trip or something like that. And once we did that, it kind of neutered the fun of the thing. I mean, it wasn't Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It was a different energy. So.
Right.
And I think people began to feel like there was too much emphasis on the prize and less on the fun.
Ah, well, that's a doggone shame. I'm going to tell you that I missed.
I'm telling you, and my accountant feels the same way.
But what inspired you to, or when did you realize, being a comedy writer, songwriter, and becoming an actor was part of your passion?
Yeah. Well, I was a child actor, so it was like from the day I started making faces in the mirror, I was hooked. And I just went from, my parents were very smart, and they realized I was happy doing this, so they enabled it. Their only concern was that I wouldn't be able to make a living at it. And so they kept saying, well, when I started writing, they said, well, you can write too. You're a good writer. You can work for newspapers and they'll never go out of business. Who knew? They weren't social scientists. They were parents. I mean, my father was a doctor, but they were, who could have foreseen the worldwide internet web on which we speak? Yeah, even as we speak. So that was just, I don't know where it came from. I mean, I had a passion, which made me unusual among my peers because most of them didn't have passions. Most of them are going, oh, what am I going to do? Let me see. Will I go into my family business, or will I doctor, lawyer? Because that's the people who are theatrical are often attracted to the law, to trial law, because they can declaim, they can go into court. When they watch Law and Order and they see all of that stuff and they figure, hey, that's for me. I can get up and I can lecture the jury and all that. But that was not what I wanted to do.
And you've been on Law and Order.
I was never on Law and Order.
Oh, you've not been on Law and Order, but you've written some things for Law and Order. If I read it correctly, you've done something.
Not that I remember. I don't think. Not Law and Order. I tried to get my mother on Law and Order. She wanted to be on TV in the worst way. We would bring her on Hollywood Squares every year for Mother's Day. But she wanted to be. She loved Law and Order. So friends of mine were doing Law and Order. Were producing it, and so I got her a gig. But she discovered the body at the beginning of the show. And it was even before you heard ding ding. She's just looking along, and then she discovers this body, and she thought fabulous. And then they said, well, you have to join Screen Actors Guild, and here's what it's going to cost, which was more than she was going to be paid. And she said to me, this is ridiculous. It's going to cost me money, and I disappear at 3 minutes into the show. Forget it. So I said, now you know what it's like.
Uh-huh. But your mother played a big influence in helping you with getting to the schools and plays and whatnot. She was part of an inspiration with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, she was a showgirl. She was a showgirl manquée. She wanted to be a showgirl, and it didn't quite work out. And she married my father. She was about 20. And she was a doctor's wife, but she did a lot of charity things. They were very philanthropic. She put together a lot of shows and appeared in a lot of shows. So she always had this thing about show business and about wanting to be on stage. But it wasn't like Gypsy, It wasn't like she wasn't this monstrous stage mother who pushed me. And they didn't make a living off of what I made as a child actor. It was all went into Bruce's college fund. So it was not like it wasn't one of those nightmare show business stories where I pushed them into letting me do stuff. I was always the one. I want to do this. And they would always say, "Okay, well, yeah, he'll be happy doing this. Let's let him do this."
Yeah, it's just a phase. It's just a phase. He'll grow out of it, and then they realize, no, he's not growing out of it.
She was always living her other life through my accomplishments, especially when it became clear that I was not going to give her grandchildren, and everybody in her circle had grandchildren, and so she had my career. They would say, well, here's a picture of my granddaughter Jennifer, and say, oh, here's Bruce on stage with Whoopi, and here's Bruce doing this and that and the other thing. So it was kind of like this was what she had. I mean, they would her claim to fame, she would call it.
Aw, well, and then yes, there are some parents that push their kids, and then they just are miserable.
Well, that's why we have emancipation laws. Hello, Britney Spears. I mean,
right? That's just mind-boggling on just that whole scenario. And then with you did some acting as well. You've accomplished a lot of things and gotten several awards.
Yeah,
I'm like get astounded and just admire you even more with you've been featured writer for Tony, Grammy, even the Emmys.
I'm the EGOT of award show writers. I've written them all. Emmys, Grammys, Oscars, Tonys. I've written all of them. I have a bunch of Emmys that I won for writing the Oscars. 2 of them were for writing the Oscars. And so I've been around the award show circuit. And that they announced the Emmy nominees this morning, as a matter of fact. And I haven't looked at the list yet. But I mean, I haven't been writing. I haven't actually written any of those shows this year. But I mean, this was such a strange, weird, Trump virus year. So everything was different. Everything was small. That's what you want: a low-key, intimate Oscars with no glamour. What's wrong with these people?
But I mean, during the pandemic, Bruce, what did you do? Or think, or did you reassess, reevaluate, or what did you do to help you get through this pandemic? And
drugs. I was. Where's my Ativan? Bring it up. Back the truck in here. Writers can keep writing. I mean, I sat at the keyboard and people were paying me, and I was very fortunate. Because live performance disappeared, so there was none of that, and a lot of my friends were really in trouble because that's how they made their living. And I was lucky in that I could continue to work and get paid, and I could sit at the keyboard, commando. And if I didn't stand up and do a Jeffrey Toobin, I was okay. So I was working. I worked on a whole bunch of projects that we're now developing them as actual stage things. I mean, I while nobody could work, I was writing them. So now I got nothing to plug, but things are upcoming. So I was very lucky. I mean, and I lived alone already, and I had all my things were in place. I was already getting everything delivered because I'm just, I'm a lazy sod. I don't want to schlep through supermarkets if I don't have to. Everything was already being Everything was being left. It wasn't being left at the curb. I was saying hello to delivery people, but So I was very lucky in that sense. I mean, a lot of my friends really suffered, and I was trying to help them out, but at the same time, I was functioning. Writers only retire when they absolutely want to. I mean, you can keep as long as you can keep writing. You can have a career. I mean, there is such thing as ageism in television and film, and so it's more difficult for you to get your voice heard. But you can continue to do it. I think people retire because they're tired of fighting, and they're tired of having to present their ideas to 12-year-olds who have no idea who they are or what they're talking about. And if you can afford to retire, then a lot of them do.
Wow. And being in acting, you've been in films, you've even been on Broadway. I think one.
I did Hairspray for a year on Broadway. Yeah, I've been off Broadway a bunch of times in my own show, my one-man extravaganza. But I did Hairspray. I toured Hairspray for a year. I shaved. I was Edna Turnblad, Baltimore housewife, ironing my way across America, and then I did it on Broadway for a year. And that was the culmination of a big ass dream I'd had for years. And I'd go back in a minute if the right thing came along. And there've been a few false starts, but nothing has happened.
So, Bruce, can you share with us? Now with my audience, I love to be open-minded, but also, the disadvantage and advantage of being in the industry. Can you share what you've learned since you started, and from what you've learned to now?
Well, the unfortunate truth is the cliche that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity holds forth. You have to be ready for anything that comes along. You have to be available, put yourself out there for stuff that you would not think of, and do things for free and take things just to build a network so people know you. You can't afford to be terribly choosy, even though you may view yourself as an artist. You have to get going at some point. Once you reach a certain level, you have more freedom. But and you can't be discouraged by rejection, because 90% of the stuff you do is going to be rejected. I mean, until you get to the point where you own everything, where you own yourself and your career, and you can choose what's done. People still get rejected, so that's part and parcel of the thing. And you're going to get criticized, you're going to be loved, and you're going to be hated, and you just have to prepare for all of that kind of stuff. But mostly, you have to, if you want to be in comedy, you really do have to be funny. Very few people get by without being funny. And you have to be able to roll with the punches. It's unfortunately, all of these things are like, yeah, we've heard them before, but it's the truth. That's the way it works. I mean, there's no magic elixir. There's no weekend in the country where a guru will tell you how it works. You just have to keep doing it.
Right. And you've come across and met some amazing people, such as Robin Williams, Elizabeth Taylor, Steven Tyler. I mean, there's just so many people.
What a selection.
Huh?
What a selection.
I know. Well, because I find them fascinating. Especially Robin Williams.
Steven Tyler is fascinating. He's brilliant. He really is very, very smart. And then, knows what he's doing. He's a good businessman, too.
Wow.
And obviously a doting father, because he raised a kid who's a terrific actress. I don't know if he raised her, actually, but maybe he did. I don't know. I'm not sure what the domestic situation was.
He was like wild and crazy growing up in the 80s, listening to him with the Aerosmith. But
dream on. Sorry, that's the end of my Steven Tyler impression.
And Lily Tomlin. I loved her as an actress, and she was on Hollywood Squares. So was Robin Williams, if I'm not mistaken.
Robin was on our iteration of Hollywood Squares because of Whoopi. We did a comic relief week, and Billy and Robin were on, and a rotating series of comics. But it was Billy, Robin, and Whoopi who were in the center line, I think. And I was there somewhere on a different square than I usually was. But Lily, I don't think was on our version, but Lily was on certainly on the earlier version when she was on Laugh-In, because Hollywood Squares started in 1967 and was on for 14 years on NBC, and then went away and came back with Joan Rivers in the 80s, and went away and came back with Whoopi in the 90s, and now is on VH1 with Flava Flav.
But honestly, what was it like? Even like working with them behind the scenes when you guys were together
on Squares?
Yes.
It was a party. We only shot 36 days a year because we did 5 shows in a day. We would do a week in a day, and we would air 36 weeks of new shows, and the other 12 weeks would be reruns. So we would meet every other weekend. on Saturday and Sunday. We would shoot 5 shows each day, and it would start like at 10 o'clock in the morning, and people would show up like around 9 o'clock, and we would go over the material, over what questions they were going to be asked, and nobody knew the answers, but a lot of the questions didn't have any real answers, and we would give them jokes and bluffs. And then we would start. We would shoot through the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday shows, have lunch, drink wine, and do Thursday and Friday, and be out of there by 5 o'clock. So it was great. And people would show up and get caffeinated, and they were ready to have fun. So it was, and nobody really misbehaved, because if you were up, there were 8 other people up there with you. If you, and you tried to pull something, these 8 people kind of look at you and go, "Girl, get it together," you know. Kind of pimp slap Roseanne if she was in a bad mood, because she, as she has said, she had 43 separate personalities, and I used to say to her, "Would you please tell number 18 to resume speaking to number 32, because it's getting in the way of the show."
What are the fondest memories in your career that you hold precious?
Well, I would say I've written 25 Oscar shows. That was pretty fabulous. Being on Broadway in Hairspray, doing Hollywood Squares, and being at the ground zero of Bette Midler. I started with writing for her. I was a journalist and a feature writer at Chicago Tribune when I met her and began writing for her, and I've been writing for her ever since. And that's been 15 years. Excuse me. Quickly, the injections, James. And you know, watching her develop, and her trajectory and all of that, you know, and being on a close, intimate working level with her has been amazing. So there's all of that. I mean, those are quite a few things that gladden my heart.
Gladden your heart. Aw. And can you think of anything that's the most embarrassing thing that you've experienced that you actually used in some of your like comedian writing stuff?
Oh, wow. So many embarrassing things. I mean, you know,
Come on, what's the funniest?
every day there's something. I actually, that's a very good question. I really haven't thought about the most embarrassing thing. I mean, those are things you try to suppress, right? And then the therapist tries to bring them out. Here you are, Dr. Carpenter, or Dr. Chapman. Who's Dr. Carpenter? Oh, that's my therapist. So sorry. I don't know. I really, well, you know, I suppose that classically it goes beyond embarrassment, but I was involved in the Ted Danson Blackface extravaganza when the Friars Club roasted Whoopi, and Whoopi and Ted were a couple, and we had Ted. They were breaking up actually, but no one knew that. But we had Ted come out in blackface and do all these horrible jokes about her. And they were the classic racist jokes. And the idea was, this was their response to 2 years of hate from all over the place, you know, and being called every name in the book. And because they were an interracial couple. And unfortunately, the Friars Club didn't tell us that this was the year they were going public. Friars Club was a small organization, and they would have these roasts in a small ballroom, and for their members and all that. And everybody who was involved knew exactly what the roasts were, that they were the place to tell the worst jokes in the world and make hideous fun of people. It's not like what Dean Martin did when you were a kid, or what Jeff Ross and Comedy Central do now, where it's controlled. It was out of control.
Right.
And they didn't tell us this year they were opening it up to the public, and they sold tickets. And so there were 1,500 people at the Hilton, and they couldn't believe what was going on. And some people on the dais decided to grandstand, like the mayor, who was black, David Dinkins, and Montel Williams, and some people decided that they were going to take great umbrage at the thing. And And I felt bad because, first of all, when you're out there in blackface, you can't say, "Excuse me, I'll be right back," and go out and take it off. So Ted was stuck, and he didn't deserve that because he's a wonderful guy. And when it was over, Whoopi kept saying, "I'm taking all the blame for this. Don't tell anybody you were involved." I mean, people knew, but she said, because you don't want to get any on you. And I mean, everybody survived it, but it was, at the time, it was awful. Ted had a very hard time afterwards, and they did break up, and he met Mary Steenburgen, and they've been married now for many years. I mean, this had to have happened 30 years ago, or 25 years ago, something like that. But it was bad for him, and he recovered. I mean, he recovered, and now we kind of laugh at it in a sort of rueful way. But it was, at the time, it went beyond embarrassing. It was shame-inducing.
So, what are you? You're still writing. Can you share some upcoming projects that you?
No, I really can't, because they're all like in development. And I can't announce anything yet.
Oh,
I got nothing to plug, Kimberly.
oh.
I can only just rake through the shards of my career with you. I got nothing I can say. And here I'll be doing. Well, I'll be performing. I'll be in at Palm Springs Pride in early November, and I will be in Fort Lauderdale Thanksgiving weekend at a new club called the Savory, and probably some other stuff. But the live calendar is coming back because things are opening, and I do a lot of colleges and theaters and corporate dates. I only work. I don't do clubs. I do my show where I know people have come to see me. Except that a corporate setting is great because you get to make fun of all of them, and they love that.
I bet.
They love that you know who the asshole is, at the firm, and you can go and you can make fun, and they get a big kick out of that. You also learn who you can't make fun of.
Oh yeah, yeah, I bet.
But I haven't done one since Me Too and BLM and all these things. Everybody's so sensitive now, and you don't realize that you're stepping on anything until it's too late. You have to really parse everything you're saying, because I mean, my white privilege, which I didn't realize I had, being gay and Jewish, I didn't realize I had white privilege, but my white privilege, my white male privilege, I can't be a Karen. I may look like a Karen, but I can't be a Karen. My white male privilege has sometimes I've forgotten that there are things that I look at from a certain attitude that other people who are on the other side of that equation don't look at with that attitude. So, and that is something that you have to sit down and say to yourself, "Gee, I didn't realize that this actually comes from the fact that I have that white privilege." Never occurred to me. Maybe I was deaf, dumb, and blind.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what, you have white privilege, and I'm like, why is it getting to that, to where to me, it's like creating a mindset. It's like we're just Americans.
Well, but you have to look at the other point of view. I have a black friend, a woman, not Whoopi. I have another black woman friend, and and she put it very succinctly. She said she was with a guy, and the guy was saying, "Well, I don't see color," and he's saying this to somebody whose entire life is informed by the fact that she is black and she is a woman, and her whole life is different from his because of color. And for him to say, "I don't see color," is bullshit, and she knows it, because he does see. He doesn't. What he doesn't see is her struggle because of her color. He dismisses it because to him it doesn't mean anything. That's white privilege.
Okay.
And when you put it in personal terms, you get it. When you talk about it in the abstract, you don't get it. And so I've been saying that, like, as gay people, we have to come out, because we're easy to hate in the abstract, especially for people who were raised with biblical precepts that don't make any sense anyway. But once they know that they're talking about you personally, their attitude changes, because there is a human face on this hatred and difference.
Well, and I think it's taught. It's a program. Even back, if you go back in time in history, there's even writings about poets and prophecies that actually, that's what prophets were. They wrote poems, they wrote music, and all these writings, and there's a misconception about that, but it's like, to me, it's like history repeating itself until we wake up and recognize that, hey, our ancestors didn't know better.
Right.
But how can we make the difference? By changing our minds, to change the way we feel about one another. We're all connected.
Yes, but you just have to reevaluate how you treat people and how your attitude towards people, and acknowledge the fact that you are the sum of your childhood experiences and of everything you were taught when you were a kid, and you just have to say, is this valid in my life now?
Absolutely. I agree with you, Bruce. And even now, like with your writing and everything, and how I see, you got to watch what you say now, because everyone is easily offended by comments and remarks, and they're not doing it intentionally. Some.
Well,
so how are you adjusting to this, like, I guess, transition?
Not easily, because a lot of jokes that you used to be able to make, you can't make anymore. And as the butt of some of them, I understand the sensitivity. There was I think there was something on Facebook with I don't know. I made some comment about picking something up. I don't know what it was. It was innocuous. And some woman wrote, well, the only thing you picked up today is a box of donuts. And I wrote back, that's easy and cheap fat shaming. Mm-hmm. And I know, because, I've written fat jokes all my life. And of course, my excuse was I'm fat, so I can make fun of somebody else. I can make fun of Chris Christie. There are so many ways to make fun of Chris Christie without mentioning that he's a tub of lard. There's so many other things you can do about him, and much more inventive than that. But right. I understand. When they come after the minorities of which I am a member, I understand what they're talking about, and you have to put yourself in that position. That makes writing comedy stuff very hard, but it also makes it challenging in a good sense, because you have to find the funny in stuff that isn't the obvious, it isn't the obvious kind of funny.
Yeah, I gotta get more creative.
Yeah, that would be one way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, I loved having you here today joining us. It was such a delight, and I want to thank you again for everything that you've done. And one more thing, you're heavily involved and an advocate for AIDS and the LGBTQ rights. Can you share some of that with us today?
Well, I've always been out. I was never hidden. I never had a double life. I was always sort of who I am. When AIDS started, it was promoted as the gay disease, because the virus was first transmitted by gay people somehow, and since it's a sexually transmitted disease or transmitted through blood, the preponderance of people who got it were gay, so it became a gay issue, and nobody wanted to touch it for that reason. And so, being in show business, since the government was going to help, we decided, I and a like-minded group decided that we would start raising money through shows like Mickey and Judy in the Barn. And so we did a lot of benefits, and I got involved in those, in putting together those benefits and writing them. And I would trade off other people. I would say, if you do this, my benefit, I'll do your benefit. So I became acquainted with all the bigger diseases because everybody was attached to a cause, and I wound up writing for all of those causes. So, hey, spina bifida, I know all about you. I learned a lot. And we began building this foundation of fundraising. And then Rock Hudson got sick, Elizabeth Taylor got involved. And once Elizabeth was involved, the thing went mainstream. And it kind of came out of the closet. It became an actual cause with real charities. I mean, not just volunteer, but professional fundraiser people and administrators. And that's because of Elizabeth. As I used to say to her, anybody will take your call. Even the Pope will take your call, if only to discuss jewelry, because they both have a lot. And in England, it was Princess Diana who kind of picked up the cudgels, and she made it a cause there. And it hasn't stopped. I mean, eventually there was a cocktail that keeps people alive for many years, even though there is still no actual cure. There is a maintenance, but of course that costs a lot of money to keep people afloat, and so you have to continue to have a flotation device for those individuals. And there's still, of course, a stigma about it. And as I've said many times, I don't know anybody who was ever forced out of their apartment because they had breast cancer, but I know a lot of people who were forced out of their apartments because they had AIDS, because landlords figured a way to get rid of them because they were scared of them. So as long as that stigma exists, there is a reason to continue the fight on two levels, obviously, on the health level and on the societal level.
Well, there's so much research now that, if you want to know, I mean, to me, it was like a myth, a story that was told. But if I really wanted to know the truth, I could go on, do my own research to find the truth about, AIDS and, how it got originated and transmitted. And then what are they doing now with the research and, the accomplishments that are helping, thousands. And thank you for doing what, stepping up and doing something, above and beyond to get.
Well, it affected my community. I had a lot of friends that, I look at that quilt and I have hundreds of names of people who I actually knew.
Wow.
So, it really is, it really affects one. And it's, that's why I was involved, because I was, taken at the flood. I was in the middle of it all.
Well, thank you once again, Bruce. It was surely a pleasure having you on the show.
Sorry about this weird lighting. I'm looking at myself. Maybe doesn't look the same to you as it does to me, but.
Well, it comes in and out, and you just can't.
Comes in and out. There's a halo effect now and again. Which is...
Yes, and it looks gorgeous on you.
All right. Yay.
Well, I look forward to seeing you on upcoming, now that things are opening up. I hope to look forward to seeing you on a show, Broadway or something. Please keep in touch and let me know. I would love to watch you. You've always been amazing. Beautiful soul. You truly are.
All right. I'll take it.
Oops, sorry. All right. I'm just so in awe right now and so grateful for having Bruce Vilanch on our show today. He's done a lot of amazing things, and he keeps going and keeps doing, and I'm really proud and just an honor to have him on the show. Look for more great interviews and great guests right here on Wake Up with KC. Do you agree that, it's time that we all
wake up and take responsibility, even for our ancestors that did not know any better.
Been waiting patiently to have this kind of conversation.